Hello everyone, welcome to 5 brand new reviews for some of the RPGs I played this year. As always, it's got a few unusual games and a couple of very cool surprises, so let's begin. We're gonna start with Anima Gate of Memories. Meet the hardest indie RPG I've ever played. It's from Spain. It's based on a popular tabletop RPG from the same country known as Anima Beyond Fantasy. In the game though, you play as two characters, this sexy girl who's only known as the Bearer, and the evil spirit Ergo Mundus. So the girl goes around with Ergo trapped in a book that only takes up human form when she summons him. It's got a dark and mature driven story as the Bearer is part of a religious organization searching for lost verses. Those contain the power to twist people, something we get to see in the game. So this is technically a bit of an open world game, but it also has a linear story. You can explore the overworld finding secrets and stuff, but also defeating special enemies, solving puzzles and progressing through the main story. Music is alright, nothing extraordinary, and the graphics for a 2016 game are quite decent, especially the character models despite not having facial expressions most of the time or when they talk. As an action RPG, you play only as the Bearer and Ergo, switching between them at any time. You have to do that because about half of the regular enemies are immune to the attacks of one character, so you'll constantly be switching between them even though both types of enemies can attack you at the same time. This is the first reason why this game's so stupidly hard. It's ridiculous how easy they can kill you or hit you because you didn't change in time, or how they can overwhelm you if your reflexes aren't great. Even though you eventually get used to this combat, the game's still a massive grind fest. Normal mode is very hard, and there's barely any difference between it and easy mode. So both the guy and the girl attack with regular combos, but they can also shoot magic bullets on rays. Obviously they have their own skill trees, but since it takes forever to gain one level and that gives you barely any points, you won't rely on them that much. Or in its generic equipment system, by the way. It's just an impossible game with poor programming in a lot of areas and a tremendous lack of balance. I never got past this boss here. I grinded for levels and still couldn't beat him on easy mode. I know I'm bad at action games, but I swear in here you gotta be extremely skillful to dodge attacks. Look at this! And yes, bosses constantly change their element very often, like every 5 damn seconds, making them immune to one character's attacks. Man, I really wanted to like this game because it's got great ideas, interesting characters and a dark story, but the difficulty just freaking ruins it, and the enemy's immunity practically breaks it. Next up is Yakuza Zero. Well, it's become a tradition to include a Yakuza game in most of these episodes, so here it is. I still don't think of them as RPGs, but the elements are very strong, so you might think otherwise. Feel free to tear each other apart in the comment section on that. So this is a prequel to the entire series, starring younger versions of Kazuma Kiryu and Goro Majima. That's right, you've got two protagonists here, and you'll be switching between them every 2 chapters until the very end. While the story isn't about either character's formative years on the Yakuza, which is what I was expecting, it's still very well written. We actually get to see why both became the way they are, though the bizarre fixation of Majima with Kiryu is unfortunately never explained here. So the plot follows a war between different factions within the Tojo clan to get their hands on the Empty Lot, a piece of real estate they fight for different reasons. So you get to experience also the disaster this brings and how it affects both personally and emotionally our two main characters. Killer story, man, but when it comes to Yakuza, that's to be expected. The gameplay is identical to all the other Yakuza games, as in you can walk freely in a small sandbox type of game within the confines of 2 cities, Kamurocho and Sotimbori. A plethora of minigames and side quests are available, which include 2 main business projects for either protagonist, an investment one for Kiryu, which I didn't really care that much about, and a cabaret for Majima, where you train girls to be better escorts. Yeah. Again, you have your stores, your restaurants to eat to recover health, your small equipment system to equip breakable weapons one at a time, and a few accessories with different buffs. Both characters have a skill tree and every ability is unlocked with money, with over-the-top amounts that you get from fighting or selling stuff. Again, random encounters are in the city and you fight in a beat-em-up style with different moves. Sometimes you'll have an ally, but most of the time you'll go solo. Both characters can change between 3 different stances instantaneously, controlling differently, and every time you fight, your rage bar fills up to do badass moves and kill everyone faster. Controls are good for a 3D beat 'em up. Not the best I've seen, but beating the shit out of your enemies feels very satisfactory. But when they beat the shit out of you, it feels quite frustrating, man. More than in other action RPGs or beat 'em ups. Fans will tell you this is an easy game and that's a lie. It is for the most part, but the last few chapters and the post-game is freaking brutal. I still managed somehow to beat it on normal mode, but there's also an easy mode. Graphics and music are top-notch, as always, killer tracks worth listening to often, and realistic visuals for a 2015 video game. This one predates the remake of the first one, known as Kiwami, which I covered in the previous episode. The best way to get into this series as a newcomer is by playing this or Kiwami. Do not start with the others. Anyway, excellent game here. Long, story mode taking between 25 to 30 hours to complete, plus a million side quests and minigames to enjoy like I mentioned. And yes, the cabaret minigame is god tier of fun and it's one of the best things about this prequel. Masterpiece. Moving on to Atelier Sophie. I beat this game several months ago for the first time. I've covered it before, but I've never properly reviewed it. This is the beginning of yet another trilogy within the Atelier universe, known as the Mysterious Trilogy, and like in most of those games, the protagonist Sophie wants to become an alchemist, except she's a natural at it, but needs guidance. Coincidentally, one day she meets a talking book known as Plakta, who was a legendary alchemist, so the goal of the game will be to train Sophie enough to restore Plakta to her human form. It's got an okay plot with the usual humor, fan service, and overly beautiful girls. The gameplay is exactly the same as in any other Atelier game. You just go around talking to your allies, triggering random scenes, increasing your bonds, getting side quests, etc. No time limit exists, thankfully, so you can explore, synthesize, and grind till your heart's content. Combat in this game is turn-based. Up to 4 characters can join in, but you cannot switch between the inactive allies during battle. And they barely get any XP, so be sure to try them all out and decide your 4 favorite characters and stick to them. The formation is on a rhombus layout, so the character in the back gets less aggro, but the difference is minimum. By executing regular attacks or skills, or getting hurt, the chain bar increases. It can activate at random when it fills up a certain gauge, so the characters execute powerful follow-up attacks, or a special attack between them all if it's on its highest level. So the combat's fun with an interesting twist. Graphics are beautiful, both on PS4 and PS Vita, and the music has so many catchy themes that you'll be whistling them without even noticing. The final boss theme is by far the best damn song in the entire game. So yeah, it's a good Atelier game, one of the most memorable ones if I may say, and I do recommend it. But now, let's talk about my 2 major complaints. First, the difficulty. For the most part, it's a super easy game, even on normal mode, like most other Atelier games actually, but often you will encounter enemies in regular areas that will utterly destroy you in a few hits for no reason, and it's not like grinding helps you that much here. Instead, you wanna farm for money to upgrade equipment or synthesize it because it costs a lot of cash to do so. Also, using skills during battle is the best way to win, but characters run out of MP extremely fast since everything costs a lot. What a frugal ass game, man. It's like they want you to be poor in all areas for the entirety of the adventure. And even with some of the best equipment available, you'll have an incredibly hard time with the final boss. The game's legendary for having one of the hardest, if not the hardest final boss ever in an Atelier game. It's absolutely nerve-wracking. Another complaint I have is the alchemy system. You put everything on a bunch of grids, but each material has different colored circles a la Tetris that you need to figure out how to position. I'm not sure this was a good idea, considering most gamers won't be able to get a perfect grid with everything positioned perfectly in order to get the best quality. Fortunately, it doesn't penalize you for mixing them wrong or in unfitting positions, so you'll be fine most of the time for most items for both story and optional quests. In the end, it's still a pretty decent game. The characters are very likable, especially Sophie herself, and it's nowhere near as impossible as Anima Gate of Memories, just the final boss. So while still great, I do not recommend this title for Atelier beginners. Next is 10 Nordics. Finally, I get to cover this 10th entry in the Ys series. In the timeline, it takes place right after the events of Ys 3, also known as the Oath in Felghana, and before Ys 4, also known as Memories of Celceta. Adol and Doggy are actually heading towards Celceta, but an incident forces them to a huge gulf with tons of islands. This is where Adol meets Karja, the princess of the Balta Sea Force, a group of Normans that are basically Vikings, forcefully keeping tabs on the entire gulf. Eventually, the town of Karnak, where he arrives, gets attacked by undying creatures and utterly destroyed. On top of it all, some magical chain binds him to Karja, and now they can't get separated at all by more than a few meters. And so starts Adol's new adventure, traveling on land and sea to break the chain, defeat the creatures, and find the root of it all. Yup, good story with a complex premise, but it's not that great. I liked it, but it's just not on par with the storytelling of 8 or 9. And honestly, neither is the gameplay. Unlike the previous few entries, you don't have any party members other than Karja. The guys that travel with you on your ship aren't playable, and they're just part of the crew. So that's a step down in my opinion from the series. Fortunately, the combat is still freaking awesome. Controls are superb as always with this series, but the controls are a bit more technical this time around. It's also on the easy side of things, but it's still challenging on normal mode. And if I beat it on normal, trust me, so can you. Okay, so both characters control differently, but I stuck with Adol since Karja felt a bit too heavy for my taste. Classic abilities attached to one button and the right trigger are back, but the highlight of this combat is this new feature. By keeping the second right trigger pressed, you'll be controlling both characters at the same time, fighting under a revenge bar. This also serves as your guard button, so by guarding from most enemy attacks, especially their skills, the bar will increase. The higher it is, the more damage your combination attacks with Karja will cause. This feature is amazing, man. It feels great and it serves wonders with the bosses. Most are epic as usual, but also as usual there are some that are a huge pain in the ass since you're forced to dodge some of their attacks in very crowded areas, like this one for example. It took me a while to figure out how to dodge by running. Yeah, merely by running. Sadly, companion AI is broken and buggy. Look at this. It's pathetic. But anyway, regardless, combat is by far the best thing about this game. However, the game's got a second battle system. You will travel the overworld by sea on a ship with slow controls. You can dash for brief moments, but most of the exploration will be painfully slow. You will also engage in these battles, shooting different types of ammo with the action buttons, but to do real damage, you gotta be close to the other ships, and it's a bit of a chore to do so. I didn't hate this combat, but honestly, I didn't like it. It felt unnecessary since all I wanted to do was play regular Ys and get to the hack and slash action, not this. Another thing I couldn't get into is the platforming, and here's where we get to the game's fatal flaw. There's no double jump. That's right. Instead, it was replaced by the use of a chain and a magic hoverboard, both controlled in a convoluted way like the hoverboard. You need to be on the exact and very precise lane to make it work, else you'll fail. It's frustrating. Kinda same with the chain movement. I didn't like these stupid Spider-Man shenanigans, man. But you know what? I didn't hate them either. By using mana points, you can unlock spaces where you equip different spheres with different buffs. Spheres that you create by using materials and crystals you find around. Some of those materials are also used as ingredients to cook, but also to upgrade your ship, buy different types of ammunition, and overall improvement. In fact, your base of operations will be the ship itself, where most of the usual shops will be available. The music is incredible too, and it thankfully didn't disappoint. Several tracks are very memorable and worth hearing over and over. Most of the boss themes really stand out. The graphics, well, it's Falcom, so by Falcom standards, they're great. A step above the previous entries, but not by much. It's beautiful, alright, but not as much as 8. Overall, the game's still pretty damn good, but it's no masterpiece. The platforming shenanigans and the ship battles aren't bad, but aren't great either. However, as always with Nice America, the translation is garbage, and so is the English dub, so stick to the Japanese dub, please. But I barely noticed any agendas, though I'll admit I didn't do a lot of side quests, so there might be some bullshit inserted here and there that I missed. Still though, I like the characters and I absolutely fell in love with Karja. She was by far the most interesting character and the writers made sure of that. She's gorgeous, especially with her regular Norman outfit. Maybe I like her that much because she reminds me of a certain other character with this look. Anyway, great game here on par with Celceta or 7, but 8 and 9 are still the kings of the series. And number 1, Cenoblade Chronicles X. So yeah, I finally played this game after so many years of wanting to. I know it's not connected to any of the other Xenoblade games, which makes it completely standalone. Earth has been destroyed because 2 alien races are fighting a war, so what's left of humanity has fled to another planet called Mira. However, one of the alien races hates them passionately and wants to see them destroyed no matter what. So your customizable character will join Blade, an organization established to protect Earth's new home and also to explore the new planet. Emphasis on explore, as this game is a true open world game, and I mean it! The whole point of it is to explore wherever you want within the confines of the massive city and of course the 5 continents of the new planet. As a result, the game is extremely quest driven, there's like a million side quests, man, despite having a linear story you can focus on. But every time you want to progress with the main story, you'll have to unlock every story chapter, or rather story mission. How do you do that? Well, first and foremost, you'll have to do one affinity quest, kinda like a sub-story that involves character development, something you will do anyway, most likely. But you'll also need to explore a certain percentage of the 5 different continents known as survey rate. I'm telling you right now, this is freaking exhausting! You can't just explore and discover new areas to increase the survey rate. You have to either find these damn lights, some of them being in almost unreachable areas, and install probes for mining. You'd want to do that anyway, cause it's the best way to make money in this game, considering its economy system is kinda messed up. Or you can also salvage treasure from parts you find out there, but you need to level up your field skills to do that. Or you can defeat elite monsters known as tyrants, but as you may have imagined, they're hard as hell, even if your level is a bit above theirs. Oh yeah, this game is hard. Harder than the others, and as a result, it's a freaking grind fest. It takes forever to level up here, so as a result, I often found myself fighting enemies that were 5 or 10 levels above me. I died often against most of them, and with others I barely survived, but I got more experience. Fortunately, dead party members also gain experience, so that's cool, but if your main character dies, you choose restart. Nah, I'm just kidding, you choose respawn. Anyway, combat here is like in the other Xenoblade games, you know it, it's on real time so you can move around, break enemy parts, a la front mission, you've got your set of skills that you can upgrade and level up. So they all have a cooldown, but you can select them at any time after the cooldown ends. You wait for the magic circle around them, like it's called an aura, to use them and do more damage, wait for the brief quick time circle, the aura, and click the button for, you know this combat, man, it's great. However, you can switch between 2 different weapons at any time, like a sword and a gun for example. You can equip different skills from both. A morale bar exists and it increases as you attack, especially when using classic Xenoblade moves such as stagger and then topple to have them fall and become vulnerable. There's more, but you get the idea. I love it. Actually, there's a class system, and as you make progress you'll be able to unlock more or class up to something more powerful. Of course, getting points for the upgrades and money for equipment and leveling up, like I mentioned, takes forever here, because they want you to play the game for as much as you can. But man, it's such a great RPG with addicting gameplay mechanics and awesome combat that it's so hard to put the controller down despite its open world shenanigans. Although I would like to point out that it's almost impossible to play without a guide, otherwise you'll get lost despite the marker telling you where to go. So off you'll go to run around or swim around in sexy outfits, so yeah, swim around endlessly till you find what you want. It may take you a long time to reach some areas though. But then there are the skells, these giant mechs that you can get by doing a big side quest halfway through the game, which is really annoying but totally worth it, because with them you can just move around much faster and reach those unreachable areas I mentioned before. Sadly, the camera for this sucks ass and it's a pain in the ass to jump around. This happens because they just take up so much of the screen. But anyway, each scale has their own equipment system and therefore their art sets, but these rely more on the weapons equipped. And combat for them is basically identical to the human combat as you can see right here. Graphics are great, it's a beautiful new planet and the fan service is superb here despite its small censorship for Lynn, especially if you buy the sexy outfits. Hell, even the aliens themselves are holy shit. Okay, Monolith Soft, okay. Still, the technical graphics are a bit bland and blurry at 30 frames per second, but I eventually got used to them. And the music is great, lots of great bangers, but some of them feel kinda out of place to be honest. Still, the soundtrack lives up to its reputation, what with it being incredible. I never thought I would say this, cause I'm definitely not a fan of open world RPGs, but I love this game, it's badass! I'm aware there's an upcoming remaster, but knowing modern Nintendo, I honestly don't give a damn about it. They'll probably censor it even more and infest it with politics. I'm sticking with the original version, which I greatly enjoyed, despite its many annoyances, and I strongly recommend it.
1, 2, 3, 4.
So those were 5 more RPGs I needed to review, and there you have it. I hope you enjoy these reviews. Thanks for watching, don't forget to subscribe and share this video with your friends. See you next time!